The Galaxy Council did not panic when the invasion fleet entered the Sol system. It did something much worse. It went silent. I was seated in the third observation ring of the Council chamber when the tactical sphere updated, turning from calm blue navigation lines to a sharp red intrusion path cutting past Jupiter's orbit. At first, no one understood the target. The raiders were new, a coalition from the outer dark, ambitious enough to ignore warning buoys and arrogant enough to believe every protected world was protected because it was weak. Their ships moved in a clean spear formation, fast and confident, broadcasting conquest claims on open channels like amateurs who had practiced intimidation in a mirror. Around me, delegates murmured in 12 languages. Then the sphere finished its predictive route. Destination confirmed. Earth. The room stopped. Not quieted. Stopped. The translation halos froze above half-raised heads. The aquatic delegate from Pelson let one breathing filter slip from her hand. An old Koran ambassador, who had survived 3 border collapses and once negotiated during a reactor fire, whispered the sentence that made my blood go cold. They are attacking Earth? My name is Seraph Vale, observer to the Galaxy Council, and until that moment I had believed Earth was protected because humans were politically valuable, young, fragile, and emotionally exhausting in ways the Council found charming. They brought music to trade summits. They named research probes after comedians. They filed complaints with footnotes and jokes in the same document. Their diplomats said things like just checking in before delivering warnings that made veteran admirals reread the room. Dangerous, perhaps, but not terrifying. Not the kind of species that could drain the sound from the most powerful chamber in known space. Yet every senior delegate understood something I did not. The emergency archive opened without a vote. That alone should have terrified me. Council procedures required debate, counter-debate, ceremonial objections, and at least one committee pretending to be useful before any restricted file appears. But Earth's file rose from the central sphere. Instantly, black-sealed, priority locked, marked with a symbol I had only seen in theoretical containment briefings. Protected world. Do not provoke. The Raider fleet broadcast again, smug and bright. Primitive Sol inhabitants, prepare for terms of submission. Your external guardians will not intervene. Compliance will preserve your infrastructure. A few junior observers looked relieved, as if the Council still had time to mediate. The senior delegates looked worse. Not because Earth had been threatened. Because Earth had been warned. Inside the tactical sphere, the first human response arrived from Planetary Defense Command. No dramatic music. No emotional plea. No request for rescue. Just one visual channel opening from a secure bunker somewhere on the North American continent. A white-skinned human male in a dark command uniform appeared on the screen, short brown hair, tired eyes, and the calm expression of someone watching a storm choose the wrong coastline. Commander Jonathan Reed. He looked at the incoming fleet data, then at the Council relay, then directly into the open Raider channel. His first words were so quiet the translators almost softened them. Are you sure you want to do this? No one in the Council chamber breathed. The Raiders laughed over transmission. The humans did not. That was when I realized the Council was not afraid Earth would fall. The Council was afraid Earth would answer. Earth was listed as protected in the Council archive for reasons no junior observer was allowed to read. That was the part that bothered me as Commander Jonathan Reed's calm warning faded across the open channel and the Raider fleet answered with laughter. Protected world status was not unusual by itself. The Council protected nursery colonies, archive moons, extinct culture sites, diplomatic sanctuaries, and planets whose native species had not yet discovered indoor plumbing without turning it into a weapon. But Earth's file was different. The seal was black, not gold. The access warning did not say preserve. It said do not provoke. A difference of 2 words and an entire philosophy. I turned to Senior Archivist Mavel, whose frills had gone pale the moment the file appeared. Why is Earth marked that way? I whispered. He did not look at me. Because the last review committee survived its own report. That was not an answer. It was worse. The central sphere opened the public portion of Earth's record, the safe portion, the polite version given to diplomats who needed enough information to avoid embarrassing themselves. Planetary classification, death world candidate, high environmental variance, unstable weather systems, elevated seismic activity, competitive biosphere, unusually persistent microbial ecology, significant predator history, high gravity adaptation within acceptable sapient range. Cultural classification, fragmented, argumentative, cooperative under extreme pressure, humor response under stress, rapid engineering improvisation, extreme attachment to home territory. Military classification, restricted. That last word hovered in the chamber like a locked door with breathing behind it. The raiders had not seen this file. Of course they had not. They had seen council hesitation, human trade disputes, messy planetary politics, open debates, public criticism, comedy broadcasts, and a species that spent half its diplomatic time arguing with itself in front of strangers. They mistook transparency for weakness. They mistook jokes for softness. They mistook the Council's refusal to provoke Earth for permission to test it. Senior delegates began speaking over one another in tight, controlled voices. Issue emergency recall. Open neutral mediation. Warn the raiders again. Do not transmit Council panic. Do not request human escalation data. That last order came from the Quran ambassador, and everyone obeyed it too quickly. Human escalation data. I had never heard that phrase before, but every elder delegate reacted as if it had teeth. On the main display, Commander Reed remained still while the Raider Admiral delivered his terms. Submit orbital platforms. Power down defense grids. Open planetary command channels. Accept provisional oversight. The words were standard conquest language, dull and polished. Reed listened without interrupting. That unnerved me more than anger would have. Anger is simple. Fear is visible. Reed showed neither. He only lowered his eyes once, reading something off-screen, then said to someone outside the camera, "Civilian grid status?" A voice answered, "Stable. Shelter compliance 94% and rising. Orbital traffic cleared. Pacific and Atlantic nets synchronized." Reed nodded. "Good." The Raider Admiral sneered through the transmission. "You prepare civilians because you expect defeat." Reed looked back at him. "No. We prepare civilians because they are not part of your mistake." The council chamber absorbed that sentence in absolute silence. Malvo finally leaned toward me and whispered the truth I had been waiting for. Earth is not protected because humans are fragile, observer Vale. It is protected because when cornered, they become organized faster than most species become afraid. Inside the sphere, Earth's blue civilian markers began lighting up across continents, oceans, orbitals, and underground networks. Not panic. Not chaos. A planet-wide checklist waking up. And the Raider fleet, still laughing, moved closer to the world the Council had spent decades trying very carefully not to corner. The Raiders mistook caution for weakness because caution was the only language they understood poorly. Their admiral, a sharp-faced commander from the Outer Dark Coalition, watched Earth's civilian markers light up and decided he was seeing fear arranged by geography. Shelter networks. Evacuation corridors. Orbital traffic cleared. Coastal grids synchronized. To him, it looked like a planet preparing to be managed. To the Council elders, it looked like something else entirely. A sleeping machine remembering its shape. The Raider fleet crossed Mars' orbit in spear formation, still broadcasting terms as if volume could make stupidity official. Primitive Earth authorities, the Admiral announced, your guardians remain passive. Your Council does not move. Your alliances hesitate. Interpret this correctly? You are alone. I looked around the chamber when he said that. No one corrected him. Not because he was right, but because every delegate understood that any council intervention now might be misread by the humans as interference, and no one wanted to become part of whatever came next. Commander Jonathan Reed heard the same message from his bunker on Earth and gave the smallest nod, as if the Admiral had confirmed a weather report. Soul defense, he said off camera, Log final refusal. A voice answered, logged. Reed turned back to the raiders. Admiral, you have crossed 3 warning boundaries, ignored 2 neutral withdrawal offers, and threatened civilian population centers on an open channel. You still have time to leave. The Admiral laughed again, less naturally this time. Human, your defense platforms are outdated by galactic standard. Your fleet tonnage is insufficient. Your species has not fought a true interstellar war. Reed's expression did not change. That was incorrect in several ways, he said, but continue. I felt my fingers tighten against the edge of my seat. The Raider Admiral mistook that calm for insult and pushed harder. We have watched your world. You debate every policy. You protest your own leaders. You leak your own secrets. Your nations distrust each other. Your citizens argue over basic facts. You are fractured. Reed glanced down at another status report. Then he said yes. The Admiral blinked. That answer was not in his script. Reed looked up. We are loud, divided, stubborn, impatient, suspicious, and very difficult to organize on a normal day. He paused. This is not a normal day. Across the tactical sphere, Earth's surface changed color. Not red. Not panic. Blue and white coordination lines spread from continents to orbit, from oceans to mountain relays, from civilian shelters to defense networks the public record did not mention. The Quran ambassador closed his eyes. Not in prayer. In recognition. The Raider fleet accelerated. Their first strike package armed, visible as bright orange markers in the sphere. The Admiral gave Earth 10 minutes to comply. Reed gave him 10 seconds to reconsider. The council chamber watched both countdowns appear side by side, one arrogant and one merciful. The Raider countdown kept moving. The human one reached 0 first. Reed exhaled once. They were warned, he said. No anger. No drama. Just record-keeping. That was when every senior delegate in the chamber leaned back from the tactical sphere at the same time, as if distance from the image might matter. The Raiders thought they had found a lonely world with messy politics and aging defenses. They had not. They had found a species that argued until the instant danger became external, and then turned every argument into a checklist. Earth did not look abandoned anymore. It looked awake. The human answer was too calm for the Raider Admiral to recognize as mercy. That was the strange thing about watching Earth defend itself from the council chamber. Nothing looked like the panic we had been trained to expect from threatened worlds. There were no frantic pleas for intervention, no emergency speeches, no leaders blaming one another on open channels. There was fear, certainly. Earth was not fearless. The civilian feeds showed parents moving children into shelters, hospitals switching to emergency power, coastal cities dimming their skylines, aircraft clearing airspace, and orbital workers sealing stations with hands that moved quickly because hands always move quickly when the heart knows what is at stake. But fear did not command the planet. Procedure did. Commander Jonathan Reed remained on the open channel while the Raider fleet prepared its first strike package. The Admiral leaned forward, savoring what he believed was dominance. Last opportunity, human. Submit your defense grid and accept oversight. Reed looked briefly to his left. Status? A voice answered from somewhere beyond the camera. Civilian net stable. Lunar traffic clear. Lagrange relays on silent watch. Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian grids synchronized. Continental response centers green. Reed nodded once. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. You coordinate as if coordination can change the outcome. Reed looked directly at him. Coordination is the outcome. The council translators rendered the phrase perfectly, and every senior delegate understood it before I did. The Raiders expected Earth to measure survival by whether it could stop the first blow. Earth was measuring survival by whether everyone knew their job before it landed. The Admiral scoffed. You mistake preparation for strength. Reed's expression became almost tired. No. We learn preparation because strength sometimes arrives late. That sentence moved through the council like a cold current. It was not bravado. It was biography. Earth had been shaped by storms, fires, quakes, blackouts, arguments, mistakes, recoveries, and generations of humans discovering that waiting for perfect safety was a good way to run out of time. The Raider Admiral did not hear any of that. He only heard refusal. So he gave the order. The orange strike markers detached from the fleet and rushed inward toward Earth's orbital defense ring. The Council sphere magnified them automatically. Junior observers flinched. Senior delegates did not. They watched the human commander instead. Reed did not raise his voice. He did not threaten revenge. He did not even look angry. He simply said, "Confirm hostile action." A voice answered, "Confirmed." Reed said, "Defense condition home?" 2 words. Quiet. Administrative. Terrifying. Around Earth, the blue and white coordination lines deepened. Civilian markers locked into safe status. Commercial satellites went dark. Weather platforms shifted alignment. Navigation buoys stopped broadcasting public patterns and began speaking in tight, encrypted pulses. The Raider Admiral smiled when he saw Earth's outer systems dim. He thought they were shutting down. Archivist Mavel whispered beside me, "No. They are closing the curtains." The first strike crossed the outer defense threshold. For one breath, nothing happened. Then Earth answered without raising its voice. Not with one weapon, not with one heroic platform, not with some dramatic beam from a single proud nation. The response came as a system. Sensor ghosts vanished. Decoy signatures folded away. Hidden tracks lit up across lunar shadow, high orbit, ocean relay lines, and deep ground command nodes. The Raider strike package suddenly found itself inside a map that had not existed 1 second earlier. Commander Reed watched the display update and said, "They still have time to turn back." The Admiral heard him and laughed again. But this time, no one in the council chamber mistook that laughter for confidence. It sounded like someone walking deeper into a room after the door had locked behind him. The first strike hit exactly where the Raiders expected Earth to break, which is why the Council understood they had not studied humans at all. The orange markers raced toward the orbital defense ring, clean, fast, confident, guided by targeting logic that had worked against a dozen quieter worlds. They aimed for the obvious platforms, the visible shield relays, the stations that looked important because humans had allowed them to look important. The Raider Admiral watched his display with the satisfaction of someone completing a lesson for an inferior species. Commander Jonathan Reed watched a different display. That was the part one noticed too late. The Raiders were looking at targets. The humans were looking at behavior. Their first strike was not only an attack, it was a confession. It told Earth how the Raiders prioritized, how their sensors filtered, how their formation trusted its own blind spots, how much they believed the public defense map. Reed listened to a stream of reports coming from across the planet and orbit, each voice clipped and calm. Outer decoys tagged. Pattern confirmed. Civilian grid holding. Lunar shadow net ready. Southern Ocean relays quiet. Reed did not smile. He did not celebrate. He simply said, "Collect everything?" Archivist Mavel beside me whispered, "They are letting the first wave teach them." The phrase made no sense until the tactical sphere showed what Earth had done. The visible platforms did not fire immediately. They shifted, dimmed, and fed false reflections outward. The Raider strike package adjusted course, trusting the correction. That trust cost them certainty. What they thought were defense stations became empty shells, sensor balloons, maintenance frames, and old orbital scaffolds dressed in enough heat and signal to look useful from a distance. The real nodes remained quiet. Not hidden by invisibility. Hidden by patience. The council chamber watched the Raider attack pass through layers of Terran deception like a hand reaching into fog and grabbing only fog with better engineering. The Admiral's smile weakened. Earth's public systems absorbed part of the data. Lunar receivers caught the rest. Oceanic relay lines beneath miles of water completed triangulation. Civilian weather satellites, which the Raiders had ignored as harmless, turned their lenses by fractions of a degree and began mapping thrust signatures with embarrassing accuracy. The humans had not built their defense to look impressive. They had built it to learn quickly. The first visible impact flashes appeared along the outer ring, bright on the sphere, dramatic enough to make junior observers gasp. Reed's voice remained level. Damage? A human officer answered, cosmetic on 3 decoy platforms. One relay dropped as planned. No civilian exposure. The Koran ambassador closed both eyes this time. As planned, he murmured. The Raider Admiral heard none of our whispers. He saw flashes and believed he was winning. He opened a channel to Earth, his voice swelling again. Your defenses are failing. Submit before further escalation becomes necessary. Reed looked at him for one long second. Admiral, he said, you are attacking our weather equipment? The chamber did not laugh. Not because it was not funny. Because it was terrifyingly polite. The Raider Admiral glanced at his officers. Doubt crossed his face for the first time, small but real. Then Earth's hidden map finished building. Across the tactical sphere, pale white lines connected every Raider vessel to every false target it had trusted, every sensor pulse it had emitted, every course adjustment it had made since entering the system. Their entire approach pattern appeared, clean and exposed, around a world they still thought was scrambling. Reed looked off camera. Prediction confidence? 96%, a voice answered. Reed nodded. Offer withdrawal corridor. The council chamber went cold. Not because Earth was trapped. Because Earth, after being attacked, was still offering the Raiders a way out. The corridor appeared in green, a narrow path back toward the outer system, safe, public, humiliating. The Admiral stared at it as if the planet had insulted him with geometry. Commander Reed spoke one final time before the next phase began. You struck the wrong planet, Admiral. You still do not understand why. Earth did not panic after the first strike. That was the detail that finally frightened the Raider Admiral, though he did not have the honesty to show it. He had expected retaliation to look emotional, loud, immediate, and messy. He expected cities screaming on public channels, governments contradicting one another, defense fleets rushing forward to prove courage, and commanders making the kind of dramatic mistakes frightened species make when home is threatened. Instead, Earth became quieter. The public feeds narrowed. Civilian networks shifted from shelter entry to shelter sustainment. Hospitals reported power balance. Food distribution grids opened regional reserves. Air traffic remained clear. Ocean traffic stopped broadcasting and moved into protected lanes. The cities did not blaze brighter in fear. They dimmed in coordination, millions of lights adjusting by district as power flowed where it was needed most. From the council chamber, it looked like the night side of Earth had learned to breathe. Commander Jonathan Reed stood in the same secure room, surrounded by status screens and voices that never rose above working volume. North American grid stable. European response centers green. African continental relays synchronized. Pacific shelters reporting 98% compliance. Lunar habitats sealed and calm. Civilian orbitals holding position. Reed listened to all of it with a stillness that made the Raider Admiral's anger look childish. Senior Archivist Mavel leaned toward me and whispered, "This is what the old reports meant." "What?" I asked, though my voice barely worked. "Humans do not become one mind," he said. "They become one argument with a shared deadline." I looked back at the sphere and understood. Earth was not united because every human agreed. It was united because the disagreement had been sorted into function. Civilian leaders handled civilians. Engineers handled power. Pilots handled traffic. Soldiers handled defense. Scientists handled data. Local networks handled local problems. Nobody waited for one perfect central command to understand everything. The planet was too messy for that. Too human. So it worked in layers, loud beneath the surface, calm at the top. A storm of independent competence hidden under 2 words from Reed: status update. The Raider Admiral refused the withdrawal corridor, of course. Pride often looks like courage when viewed from the inside. He ordered his fleet forward, tightening formation toward Earth's orbital ring. Reed watched the movement and said, "Confirmed refusal." "Confirmed," came the answer. He nodded. Activate home grid, limited disclosure. Limited disclosure. The phrase struck the council elders like a physical thing. The tactical sphere changed again. What we had seen before was not the defense network. It was the part Earth was willing to admit existed. New markers appeared from lunar shadow, asteroid mining stations, deep ocean relay points, high-altitude platforms, and objects that had been registered in council records as scientific observatories, weather monitors, debris trackers, and one historical museum satellite. The museum satellite made 3 delegates sit up straight. Mavel made a small sound. They armed a museum? Reed heard the council channel mutter and, for the first time, glanced toward our relay. It tracks debris, he said. Very aggressively. The human officer beside him did not smile. That somehow made it worse. The Raider fleet's targeting map began to fail, not because Earth blinded it all at once, but because Earth gave it too much truth too quickly. Decoys separated from real objects. Real objects changed role. Civilian satellites became sensors. Sensor platforms became signal mirrors. Signal mirrors became navigation traps. Navigation traps became doors into corridors Earth had already predicted. The Admiral tried to maintain formation, but his ships began adjusting at different rates as their computers disagreed about which threats mattered. Reed watched the formation loosen by fractions. Prediction update? 98.2%, a voice said. Civilian risk? Within shielded tolerance. Council visibility? Reed paused. Then he said, they can watch. Around the chamber, delegates went rigid. We were not watching a defense anymore. We were watching an explanation. Earth was showing us, carefully and only in part, what patience had built around a death world. That pretended to be a normal planet at trade summits. The Raiders had wanted fear. Earth gave them logistics. They wanted surrender. Earth gave them evacuation routes. They wanted a weak world. Earth gave them a planet that had practiced surviving itself long before the galaxy arrived. The galaxy learned Earth had teeth when the Raider fleet finally stepped past the line humans had been politely drawing for 10 minutes. Until then, every Terran response had looked defensive, almost restrained. Shelters. Dimming cities. Silent satellites. Withdrawal corridors. Warnings spoken in the voice of a tired air traffic controller. The Raider Admiral saw all of that and decided humanity was hesitating. The Council saw the same thing and understood Earth was choosing. Commander Jonathan Reed gave the order without raising his voice. Home grid Phase 2. Limited active response. The tactical sphere around us unfolded like a flower made of terrible mathematics. Platforms hidden in lunar shadow woke first, not as dramatic weapons, but as positioning anchors. Drone nets opened along predicted approach paths, spreading in thin geometric sheets that made the Raider formation slow without knowing why. Old asteroid mining stations rotated their industrial arrays toward empty space, and empty space suddenly became crowded with reflected signals. Ocean relays beneath Earth's surface bounced encrypted commands through water, rock, and cable, ignoring the jamming fields that made most civilized networks useless. A ring of weather platforms adjusted their mirrors by fractions of a degree, and the Raider's sensor picture began to turn against itself. They were not being overwhelmed. That would have been easier to understand. They were being organized into failure. The Raider Admiral barked orders, but his fleet answered unevenly. Some ships trusted their forward sensors. Some trusted long-range scans. Some trusted tactical prediction. Earth had given each system enough truth to disagree with the others. The spear formation loosened into uncertainty. Reed watched the shape change and said, "Mark non-responsive vessels. Offer them the corridor again." I stared at him through the Council. Relay. Even now, he was still offering exit. Mavel whispered, "That is not softness. That is documentation." He was right. Every offer, every warning, every green path back toward deep space was recorded. Humanity was building a public record while dismantling the Raiders' confidence. Then the hidden fleet appeared. Not from one heroic direction. From everywhere the Raiders had not respected. Maintenance docks behind the moon. Dark stations near Trojan debris fields. Civilian shipyards that unfolded armor panels like work gloves becoming gauntlets. Research vessels whose sensor dishes were suddenly very clearly dual purpose. Terran patrol craft slid out from behind false heat shadows, not enormous compared to the raider cruisers, but numerous, close, networked, and already exactly where they needed to be. The council chamber made a sound then, not panic, not awe, something between both. Earth had not summoned a fleet. Earth had been living inside one. The raider admiral's face finally changed. His confidence did not vanish all at once. It cracked at the edges, which was worse for him because everyone watching could see the structure underneath. He opened a private channel to his officers, but Earth had already predicted the command delay. Reed listened to reports with the same calm he had shown from the beginning. Civilian risk? Minimal. Orbital lanes? Clear. Raider formation? Broken cohesion. Council record? Complete. Reed nodded. Then hold them there. Not chase. Not punish. Hold. The drone nets tightened, not touching, not striking, simply denying easy movement. Terran ships filled the empty spaces between raider options. Decoy moons, which I had assumed were poetic exaggerations and classified rumors, revealed themselves as sensor platforms disguised among old debris and reflective ice. Underground command relays kept feeding data even when the raiders tried to blind orbit. Earth's defenses did not roar. They clicked into place. That was the horror. The raiders had attacked a planet expecting walls. They found a nervous system. They expected humans to defend Earth like property. Humans defended it like a body. Every satellite, shelter, shipyard, ocean cable, mine, city, and quiet relay had a role. Every role had a backup. Every backup had a human somewhere making sure the checklist continued. Reed looked at the Admiral one last time. You are inside our home system, he said. Leave while leaving is still simple. The Raider Admiral did not laugh this time. No one did. The Council watched the lesson in a silence so complete that even the translation halos seemed afraid to glow. By then, the Raider fleet was no longer advancing in a spear formation. It was drifting inside a web of Terran prediction, boxed in by choices it had made too confidently and too early. Every vessel still had room to move, but every useful movement led back toward the green withdrawal corridor Earth had drawn for them. That was the genius of it. Humans did not make escape impossible. They made arrogance inefficient. Commander Jonathan Reed stood at the center of the open relay, reading reports that arrived too quickly for most delegates to follow. Orbital lanes stable. Civilian grid green. Home fleet in position. Outer corridor clear. No uncontrolled escalation. The last phrase repeated across 3 human channels, and I realized it mattered more to them than victory. They were not trying to prove strength. They were trying to control proof. The Raider Admiral, now pale beneath his command markings, demanded Council intervention. The request came through public relay, stripped of its earlier confidence. Galaxy Council, he said, Earth has deployed undisclosed military infrastructure in violation of protected world neutrality. I looked around the chamber. No one answered. Not because we had no response. Because every senior delegate knew the raiders had built their own trap out of recorded warnings, ignored withdrawal paths, and open threats against civilians. Reed looked toward the Council relay as if he expected the complaint. Protected world neutrality does not require passive extinction, he said. Archivist Mavel muttered, that line will be quoted for a century. He was wrong. It would be quoted for longer. The Council sphere replayed the entire engagement in compressed tactical layers. Raider entry. Human warning. Civilian protection. Raider. Refusal. Human withdrawal offer. Raider attack. Terran data collection. Second offer. Raider advance. Home grid activation. Third offer. Every step clean. Every response measured. Every escalation documented. The horror in the chamber was not fear that Earth had lost control. It was the opposite. Earth had control and had been showing restraint with the precision of a surgeon labeling instruments. The aquatic delegate from Pelson whispered, "They could have hidden all of this." The Koran ambassador answered without turning. "They wanted us to see enough." Enough. That word settled over me. Earth was revealing teeth, yes, but not all of them. It was showing a fortress death world through a keyhole. Around the sphere, delegates began reassessing decades of human diplomacy in real time. The jokes. The complaints. The messy debates. The public arguments. The endless insistence on civilian safeguards, redundant systems, open records, emergency drills, and local autonomy. We had thought those were cultural quirks. They were defense architecture. The Raider Admiral finally understood some portion of his mistake. His fleet slowed. Then one ship angled toward the green corridor. Then another. Pride resisted for 12 seconds more, which was longer than wisdom required and shorter than disaster allowed. Reed did not pursue. He did not mock them. He did not celebrate on an open channel. He simply said, "Track until outbound. Do not crowd them. Let them leave." That frightened me more than if he had sounded triumphant. Triumph would have made humans familiar. Restraint made them disciplined. The raiders withdrew past the outer threshold under the gaze of every council recorder, every Terran censor, and every silent delegate who now understood that Earth had not needed rescue. The council had not watched a battle. We had watched a boundary being explained. When the last raider vessel crossed beyond the marked zone, Reed finally looked directly into the council relay. His face was tired. Not proud. Not angry. Tired. "Council Observer Channel," he said, "please update your protected world advisory." His eyes moved once to the now empty intrusion path, then back to us. "And next time, warn them faster." No one asked if Earth needed protection again after that, because the question had become embarrassing. The Raider fleet left the Sol system by the exact corridor humanity had drawn for it, escorted not by force but by attention, which somehow felt stricter. Every ship was tracked until it crossed the outer boundary. Every transmission was recorded. Every warning was archived. When the last red marker disappeared beyond Neptune's far relay net, the Galaxy Council chamber remained silent for 30 more seconds, as if the room itself needed time to accept that the protected world had never once looked helpless. Commander Jonathan Reed stayed on the relay long enough to confirm civilian systems were stable. Around Earth, city lights began returning by district. Orbital traffic remained paused. Shelters stayed active until local authorities cleared them. Hospitals reported normal function. Lunar habitats reopened internal corridors. Weather platforms resumed being weather platforms, or at least resumed pretending that was all they were. Reed listened to each report, nodded once, and finally looked back at the council. No speech. No lecture. Just that tired human calm that now felt heavier than any threat. "Sol defense standing down to watch condition," he said. "Civilian grid remains priority. Council advisory requested within 1 standard hour." Then he ended the channel. The sphere collapsed back into neutral blue, but no one trusted blue the same way afterward. Senior Archivist Mavel opened the protected world file again, this time with full council authorization. I saw the restricted note that had been hidden from junior observers for decades. Earth protection status is not based on human vulnerability. Earth protection status exists to reduce accidental activation of total system defensive behavior. Avoid forcing public demonstration. Maintain diplomatic respect. Do not mistake internal human disagreement for external weakness. I read that last line 3 times. Do not mistake internal human disagreement for external weakness. It should have been printed on every Raider console in the galaxy. The Council issued its updated advisory within 40 minutes, a speed that caused 3 procedural clerks to look personally betrayed. The new warning was shorter than usual. Direct hostile action against Earth, or recognized Terran civilian zones, is classified as extreme strategic self-endangerment. Mediation strongly recommended before approach. No one liked the wording. Everyone voted for it. In the cycles that followed, The Raider Coalition became a cautionary case in every military academy that still believed clean formations and loud conquest claims counted as strategy. Analysts debated the layered defenses, the decoy platforms, the civilian coordination, the hidden fleet geometry, the legal recording discipline, and the strange Terran habit of offering escape routes to enemies who had already made poor decisions. They missed the part that mattered most. Earth had not revealed power because it wanted admiration. It revealed only enough power to make the galaxy update its manners. I visited Earth 2 years later as part of a Council observer exchange. I expected a fortress world. I found traffic, rain, coffee shops, sports arguments, children chasing each other through parks, and citizens complaining loudly about construction delays under skies that had once hidden a defense grid elegant enough to paralyze a raider fleet. That was when I finally understood. Humans did not live behind their defenses. Their defenses lived around the lives they refused to stop having. Years after the Sol incident, young observers still ask me why the Council watched in horror when the raiders announced their target. I tell them the truth. We were not horrified because Earth was doomed. We were horrified because Earth had been patient. Patient with insults. Patient with warnings. Patient with secrecy. Patient with the galaxy assuming that a species arguing with itself must be weak. And when that patience ended, it ended with checklists, shelter lights, quiet commands, and a green corridor offered to fools who did not yet know they needed mercy. Protected world never meant fragile. It meant do not make them demonstrate why they are calm.